I'm Josh Banks, and I'm going to talk through how to be a vocal performer in the musical theatre industry. I'll be covering these different points today, so we'll be going through what is singing, the key attributes that you need to be a successful vocal performer, the common problems that people within this industry do face and how we can prevent these, also how we protect our voices, warming up, which obviously is led on from that, the qualifications and different schools that you can lead on to that could help you within this industry, your employment opportunities and the working conditions if you did go into this, and my own personal experiences within singing, and then obviously I'll have time for questions at the end. So first of all, what is singing? There's many complex muscles that is involved in creating sound and your voice. However, it's mainly produced by the vibrations in the vocal folds. These are your vocal folds, it's not very clear here. And then when they open to let yourself breathe, they have to be open to let yourself breathe, otherwise you wouldn't be able to breathe. They then snap shut whenever air is being passed through, and that snapping shut vibrates the air, which then resonates and create the sound waves. That frequency then comes at different pitches. The reason we have different voices, different tones, different pitches, and why we're all so different with that is because everyone's vocal folds and different muscles in their throat are very different to each other, and that creates different sounds when they vibrate. However, it is estimated that around 17.9 million adults in the US last year alone reported a problem with their voice. And some of these disorders can be avoided by taking care of your voice. We'll be having a look at some of them now. In a minute. Just some of the key attributes that you could have to be a successful vocal performer. Dedication. That is possibly the biggest one. You're going to take criticism, you're going to take rejection, and the dedication to keep going, and it goes with motivation as well. Just to keep practicing, keep turning up to auditions, keep working hard on your own in rehearsals, turning up to rehearsals, being there 5 minutes before, staying 10 minutes after. Not just as a vocal performer, but in all musical theatre, that is very important. Discipline. No director, no producer, no choreographer is going to want to hire you if you are having bad manners, if you're turning up late, if you have bad punctuality. Interpersonal skills. You need to work with a lot of people in the music industry. You have to work with agents, directors, choreographers, musical directors, musicians themselves, other singers that you'll be singing with. And if you can't have those interconnected skills with each other, then it's not going to work because you can't listen and feed off of each other's advice. At the end of the day, you do need some natural talent. Obviously it can be trained, but you need that pure skill originally if you want to make it professional. Stamina, obviously, yeah, again, that can be improved. You can do a lot of training to improve your vocal stamina. We'll be covering a few of them later in some warm-up activities. And your promotional skills, one that's often overlooked, but if you have a great, not only brand image, but also a great CV, a great resume, then that really puts yourself out there and you get that extra step above any other candidates that you're going up against for a position. Common problems that you have with the voice. Post-viral problems. This is probably the most common one for a lot of people in the industry because colds and coughs will come to everyone. They're natural, they cannot be avoided. However, the post-viral voice problems can be prevented. The reason that this is an issue is because a raspy speaking voice, due to the frequent coughing, is undesirable. No one likes to hear that. You prefer to have a much clearer sound with your voice. And also an infection could swell up the vocal folds, which affects the closure of them. And yet again, as I talked about earlier, it's the closure that makes the nice sound and the clearer sound. We can work around this though. You need to rest your voice if you've been ill. Vocal rest, which I will go on to later as well in much more detail, it's a vital way of making sure that you're much healthier when you're coming back to singing. You don't want to push it too early. If you are predominantly a singer, can we go back? If you are predominantly a singer, you need to try and avoid belting and using the most powerful bits of your range because this is really damaging on the parts of your vocal folds that haven't yet healed. So if you really have to sing, you need to try and use your falsetto or your head voice, as some people call it, just because this is a bit softer on yourself and it's easier to produce. Thank you. The next thing that can affect how you sing is emotion. Now this one actually surprised me quite a lot. But to create a clear, open sound for singing, you need the retracted vocal folds. And a good way of like practicing this is hard, silent laughter. So you can just give that joke, just like when you go that kind of thing. That's the open folds that you want. And if you can try and emulate that position when you're singing, then it will become a lot easier and you'll get a much more rounded sound. Negative emotions such as fear, stress, and anxiety, for example, all of the emotions you get with stage fright actually have a really negative impact on your singing. They produce a much more tense vocal folds, and this just limits your entire vocal ability. Thank you very much. Acid reflux. So the larynx, which holds your vocal folds within it, is very close to the esophagus, which is obviously the tube that travels down to your stomach. So if you're sleeping, small bits of acid can actually travel back up the esophagus, and normally if they get all the way up, they'll actually lay on your vocal folds, and this is obviously really damaging to them if it happens quite a lot or in large quantities. To prevent, if this happens to you, it's such a specialist thing that you have to go to a laryngitis, and they will do what's called a laryngoscopy, which is a procedure where they'll go down there, they'll examine what's wrong, and then they should be able to fix it. There are ways to prevent this. Not eating too late, because your stomach needs to not be working when you're going to sleep, and trying to raise your head when you're sleeping by having more pillows at the head of your bed. One case study of this is Amanda, who we've worked closely with. She very openly has told the story where she was eating very acidic foods before shows, and she then got quite bad acid reflux and actually burnt quite a lot of her vocal folds to the point where she went onto stage that night and produced no sound and had to go see a specialist about it, and not good. So just try and stay away from acidic foods and eating late at night. Thank you. How to protect your voice in general. Vocal rest, as I said, this is probably the most widely used one. I myself use this from all the way down in amateur dramatics all the way up to the highest professionals. They will use vocal rest. There is some science behind it. As I say, just resting your voices after viral infection is really good for you until your vocal folds are ready to be used again. However, when you speak or sing, more than just your vocal apparatus is involved. You've got all sorts of muscles working together in your chest, but also like your breathing mechanisms. So when you're using, so if you don't want to use these too much in a recovery time, just because it can possibly cause undue pain and it can actually damage them more than they should be. The purpose of vocal rest is just to hasten recovery time. It doesn't necessarily help recovery itself, it just helps to speed it up. So it has to be paired with rehydration, it needs to be paired with gentle exercises later on in the process, but vocal rest in itself is very important in your recovery time after straining your voice, after overusing your voice, or post-viral problems. Sorry, that's fine. Steaming, this is one I haven't used, but Rowan has used quite a lot, and she finds it very helpful. And Miss has used quite a lot.
I have local nodules, and steaming is a very important part of my recovery from nodules.
So the reason that is because we need to keep your vocal folds and your vocal cords really hydrated. Otherwise they become dry and more easily irritated. And whilst drinking water eventually will hydrate them, it's not an instant process, because when we drink water, it doesn't actually directly pass over your vocal folds. A good way of doing this is steaming. So not necessarily completely boiling, but very warm water that has steam coming off of it, and you need to inhale nice and deeply so that it gets straight to it, because it's that instant recovery. However, saying that, water is still important because you need the rest of your body to be hydrated when you're not feeling at the top of your game. It also will get there eventually, and it could be a soothing feeling if you're in a lot of pain. Yeah, that's probably it, yeah. Healthy lifestyle, I'm only going to touch on this a tiny bit because obviously Ewan has done a full presentation on this one. It's pretty obvious, smoking and secondhand smoke really damages your vocal folds. If you're a full-time smoker, you're less likely to make it in the career. Spicy foods, as I mentioned, Amanda, she was eating spicy prawn curry that night. That was what led to the stomach acid, which then led to burning her vocal folds. So avoid those as much as possible. You need whole grains, fruits, vegetables, basic things with lots of vitamins and healthy nutrients that can keep all of your muscles strong. You also need things that will stimulate your mucus, because they are what keeps your vocal folds lubricated and can move a lot smoother. Rest, huge one, goes with vocal rest, but also just general rest in itself. Fatigue is huge. You need to not feel drained when you're doing it. You need to be at the top of your game. And exercising regularly. It increases your stamina, which then increases your vocal stamina. You can dance for longer. You're much more desirable to any director or choreographer. Warming up your voice. Just like athletes have to warm up all of their muscles, singers and actors should really warm up their voices if they don't want to strain their voice and want to maximise their range. One rule, the sillier you sound normally means you're stretching your voice better. So we're going to do a few exercises that I've compiled. Some of them I've learned recently, some of them I've done in the past. We're going to do body stretches, shoulder rolls, neck stretching, humming, lip thrills, tongue twisters, signing, and baby crying. So we're going to be mixing a whole different so which do what. So, body stretching, it's really important first, before you do any other type of warm-up with your voice, is that you have to open up your lungs, open up your diaphragm, because breathing throughout vocal stimulation is really important, otherwise it doesn't get the oxygen required to keep yourself healthy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our arms and we're going to lean over, and this is going to open up all of this rib cage, which makes this lung a lot easier to breathe. So just hold that for a second. And then we'll do the same the other way. And make sure you're breathing throughout all of this. And then we're going to do a similar one. We're going to go forward this time though. You're going to try and get your hands to the bottom. On the way down, I want you to exhale. And on the way back up, inhale. You ready? So we'll go down together. Do it once more. It's like a roll down. Cool, so we've opened up our lungs a bit there, we've opened up our ribcage. Obviously we would spend more time doing that. Shoulder rolling, yet again, that opens up all of this area. It makes your blood flow around your upper body, which is very good. So just start off with some smaller ones. And then you bring in your arms. And then it's the full ones. And then we'll go the other way. And then with your elbows. And then forward. Neck stretching, it's really important that our vocal cords aren't constricted. However, really, really important, you don't overstretch. If you overstretch, then they can become damaged. So don't push it too far that it hurts. Only do it to the slight point where you feel a stretch. Okay? Also really important, we don't tilt our head backwards when we're stretching our neck. That's really damaging to your vocal folds, also damaging to your upper vertebrae. So when we're doing neck rolls, when you get to the top, you just put your head across, you never go back. You ready? So we'll go that way first. So just until you feel that stretch, hold that for a second. And then across to the other side. And then chin to the chest. And then just roll it out, remember not to go back. Cool, so now we'll move on to some actual vocal warm-ups. Humming's a really important one. Humming gets that stimulation without forcing a big sound, so it's really introducing a voice to it gently and softer. So we're going to do humming just, we won't do it through a scale, we'll just go humming on a siren kind of thing, but not fully sirening yet because we don't want to burst our voice all in one go. So we just start just on a random note, just do that for longer as well. That also helps to warm up your voice. Lip thrills, yeah. So you've got to do that. This is really, really good for not only stimulating your mouth to be able to move wider, it's getting your lips ready to be moving. It's also easier to get higher pitch at this point, so this is going to help starting to warm up your higher parts of your range. So I'm personally not very good at lip thrills, but we'll just give it a go. We'll start and we'll go up and down, up and down. Just do it twice. You ready? Just that kind of thing. You ready? Do that a couple of times. You can do it lower if you need to. Tongue twisters. There is a one that I was going to do, but it's on my phone. So we'll just do red lorry, yellow leather. Okay? We're going to work our way up a fifth in the scale, and then we'll work our way back down. So it'll be red lorry, yellow leather, red lorry, yellow leather, up to the fifth, and then we'll work our way back down. You ready? 5, 6, 7, 8. Red lorry, yellow leather, 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 red lorry, yellow leather. And then you work our way back down. You ready? Red lorry, yellow leather, red lorry, yellow leather, red lorry, yellow leather, red lorry, yellow leather, red lorry, yellow leather. Cool. You can do loads of different tongue twisters. They're out everywhere. You can find them. You can find funnier ones. You can do ones with music. Sirening. Briefly mentioned sirening in your presentation earlier. Sirening is vital. It's one of the ones that I find the best to warm up my voice. I was taught this by Kathy Sutton, personally, one of my vocal coaches. And it's really good for getting that full range. And if you do practice sirening more, then you can actually increase your range by a couple of notes as well, so that it's really helpful to do sirening before every time. However, I would suggest doing it near the end of a warm-up. So just follow my hand and we'll just work our way through it until we're pretty much out of breath. You ready? Do that onto different notes, onto different vowels as well. I only chose R because that gets that open vocal fold structure that's really good to getting that nice tone. Baby crying, this is a fun one. It's one of those ones that you do sound silly doing, but it really activates the top of your range. I'll give you an example of it and then we'll join in a second. So it's ah, ah, and it's really good for not only strengthening your falsetto, but also for just strengthening your ability to change between your normal chest voice and that falsetto as well. It also does activate that top range so that you shouldn't feel worried about hitting those top notes when we come to it singing later. So, you ready? We're not actually singing, don't worry. You ready? So just let's see if we can go high. So you see where we're going. You can push it as high as you want, as low as you want. So that's warming up. We can warm up body, then voices, and that's the best way to do it. So we'll move on to our next slides. You can double click though because it's got loads of animations. And again. And again. Cool. Qualifications. Qualifications aren't necessary to become a vocal performer. However, it never hurt anybody to do them. So if you do start from a young age, could be a good idea to do it. Also, if you start only when you're 16 to 18, you can always start taking qualifications. You can go into it as GCSE, A-level, Loads of different ways. So these are the 4 different types of qualifications that are available to purely singers. So you have preparatory exams. These are normally for absolute beginners, so these are ideal for younger children. These are quite simple, quite basic. Then you have your grade exams, so these are the grades 1 to 8. That's the same for any musical instrument. These are intermediate, so obviously the higher you get, becomes more of a professional level skill. So between the grades of 6 and 8, they actually get equivalent of UCAS points, which will then help to go on to colleges and universities that I'll talk about in a minute. Diploma exams are offered by all the main examination boards. These are the top dogs. These are the really high qualifications. If you have these on your resume, you stand out. You can normally do these at most performing arts colleges. You can also do theory qualifications with this to do with musical and singing. School exams as well, so you can take music from GCSE and A level. So you will study singing within that. You will study notes, warming up, all of that kind of thing within it. So any of those would help you on your career, but they're not a necessity. Some performing arts schools specialise in singing. These are the pre-18 ones. There are hundreds across the country. These are just a few that I picked out because they stood out to me. The Brit School is a state school. It's one of the only performing arts state school. And it only accepts between 14 to 16-year-olds. Therefore, it's quite a specialised age group. Because of this, they're quite intense. So it's normally a school that you'd go to open your gateways to much higher performing arts schools post 16. So if you were lucky enough to go to this one, then it becomes more of a possibility to be a vocal performer. Some of the people that went here that went on to be a vocal performer, you've got Amy Winehouse, Adele, Jessie J, loads of them there. That was a very popular school amongst singers. The Sylvia Young Theatre School, yet again, specialised in performing arts, but especially singing. They were between 11 and 17, so it was a weird age group because they finished halfway through their A levels. Yet again, they can be found. The students of this school can be found in West End level productions, so they really do strive to get to the highest standard possible. Their famous students for singers, they had Rita Ora, Dua Lipa, Tom Fletcher. Yet again, high standards people. And the last one that I chose was St Mary's Music School. This is completely a music school, so there is still opportunities for singing within that, but it will be more of a classical route. But they do say that they pride themselves on being more versatile, so they will offer pop and musical as well. But if you went to that kind of school, you'd probably be more likely to go into opera or classical singing with an orchestra instead. The specialised schools post-18, this is when your options broaden massively and you've really got to find a school that is right for you. You can you've got a choice of 2 things. You can go to a university that will offer a performing arts degree, so that'll be a Bachelor of Arts degree. Here's just a few of the ones that I found. There are about 20 universities across the UK that offer specifically performing arts degrees. You have Falmouth, Teesside, Leicester, Bangor, and there were more. Alternatively, and much like students that we know, you can go to a performing arts college and they will specialise completely in performing arts, and their goal is to get you into the industry as opposed to getting a big qualification at the end. So some examples of these ones, you've got Arts Ed Guildford, Mount View, LAMDA, and the Royal Academy of Music. The Royal Academy of Music stood out to me because, yet again, instead of necessarily focusing as heavily on dance and acting, they were really trying to get singers through. Whether that is as a backing singer or in a musicals, they also really did promote their ideas to try and get new and upcoming pop singers as well. The employment in this industry and the working conditions. If you wanted to be purely a vocal performer, you perform to live audiences or in recorded performances. You have to work with other people. as well as solo performances, so you've got to be independent and interdependent at the same time. Some of the job skills that you might need, natural talent, as I talked about, but it can be learned as well. You can get tutoring. Ability to accept criticism, possibly the most important skill, because if you crumble under your first bit of criticism or rejection, you're never going to make it in this industry, because it's very, very unlikely that the first place you go for, you're going to get in. That leads on to the mental health talk about it. Yet again, I'm not going to touch too much on it, but as a singer, mental health is huge, because if you struggle with your mental health and keep it within, your criticism is all going to build up, your rejection is going to build up, and you won't be able to handle the pressure. Also, time management, huge one. If you are late to your courses, if you're late to your classes, if you're late to rehearsals, any of that, or not getting your work done outside of school and colleges, won't have you. That's some more stuff that they would look for, supposedly. In America, the median hourly wage was around just under $27 for singers and musicians. However, it can be that musicians do fail and they become buskers and will earn very little money. There are also the musicians that earn hundreds of thousands. This job sector in the last year has interestingly grown by about 6%, and I think this is due to the much more demand and need for musical theatre within culture these days. If you didn't want to be a purely vocal performer, there are other jobs you can go into. Singing tutor, as I've mentioned a couple of times, Kathy Sutton, who I've had tutoring from before, she does do bits of opera singing, but her predominant job is a singing tutor. A music teacher in a school teaching GCSE or A-level. Opera singer, as I mentioned there, or going into musical theatre and just having singing as your side note. My personal experience with singing on the other side. I really used to be below average singer. I'm not saying I'm fantastic now, but I really couldn't even get a note out. So that's why I started. Although I was always interested in singing, my Year 5 talent show, I sang Just the Way You Are, Bruno Mars, and I started crying because I had a voice crack halfway through and I ran off stage. I came to secondary school and I instantly loved musical theatre. My first ever show was Once Upon a Mattress. I was a chorus member in that, and that was my first real experience of singing with a group of people, and intensely. I really enjoyed it, so I thought, right, I'm going to pursue this, which led me on to 2 years later getting my first ever principal role of Arvine Abernathy, and he had a solo song, horrendous song, never going to sing it again. But that was a real eye-opener for me, getting to work one-on-one with a musical director, and having that pressure to be relied on to sing a solo. At this point, my vocal tone still wasn't there. I did start to get the notes right, but it didn't sound very nice. Stayed with school for a couple more years, and then I got an opportunity to join CLOC, which is a musical theatre group outside of school. I went straight in there and played the lead of their show, which was High School Musical, which came with multiple songs, solos and duets. And so there I had to work really intensely on my singing. The one thing that they fixed straight away was my posture while singing, which helped with my vocal tone. One thing they noticed was that my head would always lean back if I was singing a high note, and that was straining my vocal folds, as I talked about earlier, and you've got to keep them nice and open, and that helped with my vocal tone. So then when I came back to the school show, it was a lot easier. CLOC Concert, that was the first example I had of singing intensively in harmony. We did a song called Seize the Day, which we did it completely a cappella as a 4-part harmony. And singing in harmony, as Harry will agree, is hard. And it takes a lot of practice. You've got to try and remember your own line whilst listening to others. So that's, yet again, you're working independently while staying in time with others, so working interdependently at the same time. Couple of years later, 2019, I started having lessons with Kathy Sutton in Build Up for Greece. And one thing that we picked up on was my breathing technique was slightly wrong. I wasn't getting enough air in to reach the top notes of my range. So we worked on that a lot, and that did help. quite a lot. In December last year, hit my highest ever note in stars. Just like to put it on there, yeah, quite a big thing for me. Hit a G. The one thing that this was a lot easier for me was that the note that I hit it on was an R, which, as we did earlier, is a really open vowel. However, in the school show, singing my highest song is Sandy is all E, which is a really constraining sound. And it was really hard to get up there. Which leads me nicely onto Greece and the complications I had with losing my voice. At this stage, I hadn't looked much into maintaining my voice because I hadn't ever had to before. I've only ever done a few shows. I'd never done them in such close proximity. At this time, I had just done the Clock concert one weekend, and then that week I then performed in four shows, rehearsing very intensively, and my voice couldn't cope with it because I didn't know how. So in hindsight of this, I've got to watch what I'm eating, watch my vocal rest, I've got to start steaming. And because of this, one of my reviews was that I was perfectly in tune because I knew the notes, I practiced on them, but I just wasn't a strong enough voice. And that was because I felt my voice going and I had to hold back. I couldn't put it out there. And with more vocal training, they suggested I'd be able to then have a stronger belting voice and still hit those notes. So that is how to be a vocal performer on the whole. Are there any questions?
I've got a question. So you said you worked with Amanda Ball, someone who is a West End performer and has performed in Starlight Express in Greece. And what advice did she give you about your voice or your vocal tone or technique?
One thing, first of all, her main advice was believe in myself. She picked up very, very quickly that I didn't believe in myself and I didn't believe in my singing capabilities. And that links back to the mental health side of it, that if you don't believe in yourself, although it's important not to believe too much in yourself, if you don't believe in yourself at all, then you're never going to get to where you want to be. Secondly, the actual practical bits of advice she said was, for example, in You're the One That I Want, on any ooh sound, I was really closing my mouth and I was going ooh, which is all right at that kind of range. However, once I was getting to the top ones, I wasn't producing a sound because they were so constrained. So the advice that she had was that even though it might not sound as much like an ooh, try and open your mouth as much as possible to like a ooh, because it made your vocal folds stay wider and you can get more air through. Also practicing a lot more, she said, and just go for it, go for the industry. And she said, yeah, just try and work as hard as you can to get there. Yes, yeah?
So you said that there was like you could go down the classical route of going to a music school.
Yeah.
And obviously you'd come out of that with really strong singing. Would you say it would still be harder to go into musical theatre from that than, let's say, from the Brit school?
So if you're talking about like going to, for example, the one in Scotland, the purely musical school, yeah?
Yeah.
As in classical music.
Yeah.
So if following that you really had a passion to go into musical theatre, yeah? I think not necessarily a disadvantage. Not everyone is in the same position. It depends how hard you worked. If you got yourself an agent at the start of your school career, which is really important because they're the ones that will find you your roles, then it's still possible for you because you both turn up to the audition, you both start on that audition. However, if you knew that you wanted to go into musical theatre, I would strongly recommend going to a performing arts college as opposed to a classical musical school, just because that's college designed for that industry, whereas the musical school maybe is a bit broader. So although your opportunities are wider at the end, they're maybe slightly limited in what they can actually provide you in terms of taking your next steps.
Anything else?